Yeah, well, I would say like the about our body's the car, the our mind is like the chauffeur, and then
Ooh,
the
I like that.
soul is kind of sitting in the back going, here's where we're really going. Here's where
Oh,
we're
wow.
actually going. So I guess, and the chauffeur, maybe the mind is kind of a tricky chauffeur who always wants to make stops, like to get snacks and, like do all this distraction. So, and the soul's in the going, no, let's keep pressing on to our ultimate destination.
Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking with Sara Wiseman. Sara, you have a wide range of accomplishments over the years. You're a visionary teacher, you are intuitive, you're a channel, and you've taught literally tens of thousands of people and
Yeah.
students over the years with your books, your courses, your trainings. You're the founder of Intuition University, which I myself was able to be a part of, which is a wonderful thing. You write an award-winning blog. You were doing the Daily Divine blog. Now you do Divine Astrology. I hope I pronounced that
Mm-hmm.
right. And honestly, you also host the popular Spiritual Psychic podcast. But if that's not enough, you're also a singer and songwriter who's won some awards for your music with the band Martyrs of the Sound. So how awesome. And what a difference you're making in the world. Welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having you. I'm really excited to be here.
You've been immersed in this spiritual work publicly for 20 plus years, and truly you've touched so many different lives and have made a difference. How did you get started on this path? Like, how did it show up in your life, or was it something that was always there?
I think the whispers or the hints or the pebbles on the path were there, when I was a child. I was one of those weird kids. I would go to the library and get out all not the Bible, but like the Torah, the Quaker book. Like I would go to the religion section and check out those books. And I don't really think at that age, like I even understood what I was reading, but there was something about it. I was just deeply attracted to whatever was in there, even though I wasn't understanding it correctly. And I think, even though I would think I officially became psychic in 2000, I think I was psychic for my whole life. I think I had experiences of mediumship. I knew stuff. I just had this different view, like lots of people do, not just me, kind of from the very beginning. So it just took a long time to get on the path is sort of the story of my life. It was always there, but it took a long time to get on the path. Yeah.
I can relate to that, actually. I do believe we just talked before we started this about getting messages. And, historically, I was not so good at listening and following through. But after you get a few spiritual kicks in the butt, you
Yeah.
get in line a little bit quicker. And part of it, it's obviously your spiritual growth. But, these days there's a lot of talk about spiritual awakening. That term spiritual awakening is being thrown out there a lot. And people will talk about going through a spiritual awakening. Other people are curious about what is a spiritual awakening? How would you describe a spiritual awakening?
I would describe it as the moment in which you understand that the worldview, like the worldview that we're given by our culture, by the mainstream media, by social media, by what would our, the way we're raised, all of those belief systems, you just kind of realize like none of it's none of it's correct and none of it's the way, and that there is a way to connect in with your, I would just call it your soul self or your collective soul. And once you drop into that space, it just sort of feels like a distant memory of all the things you were told. And at that point, you're awake and you're starting to walk the path. But it does take that looking at everything and just going, well, that's not really true. And that's not really true. And I agree with that, but it's not really a truth. It's just kind of my opinion or my flavor of how I think. It's letting all that go, letting all of it go is what I think it is. You become
Nice.
aware of your consciousness. You become aware of yourself as soul.
That
Yeah.
makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Um, People become more curious because things that we've been taught or indoctrinated would start not making sense. So you brought up the soul, and we are the soul, but many people, I would say, I would say mostly how I hear it languaged is people will say the soul is part of them. And they
Mm.
refer to my soul, and they refer to their soul, our soul, my soul, as a separateness versus a
Mhm.
oneness.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that, and can you explain it
I
maybe a
the
little bit
yeah.
different?
I don't know. I have the way that I so my way at looking at things comes from channeling spiritual teachings, and so I have many various opinions and do all kinds of reading and study, but um, I base my work on what I receive in channeling. And so, right or wrong, I mean, maybe at the end of my life, I'll be like, whoops, I was following the wrong path this whole time. I don't know. But um, in the channeling, they say pretty specifically, like we are in a human life, we are our body, our mind, ego, personality, which is what's usually running the day, and then the soul self, which is consciousness. And the bigger part of this is that the soul self is not separate to us. It's part of the entire collective soul, which is consciousness, which people often call that God or source or all or oneness. So we are in this container, but at the same time, we are a part of this collective that is consciousness. So we're all those things at once, is how I look at the world.
That makes sense. And I believe it was in one of your recent divine astrologies. And actually, it was interesting when I read it because I heard someone else use the same example. That the body's a vehicle. And if you
Yeah.
compare it to a vehicle of driving a car,
Yeah.
that basically our body is what we think we are, maybe, if you're not on the spiritual, the spiritual person on the human experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about ourselves more consciously as we're driving the physicalness and how we manipulate the earth, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
soul that's actually the being, the spirit
Yeah.
that drives it. So it was like, wow, that's the second time, like in the past month, I've heard this example from very different venues. I thought that was interesting. Now, did
Yeah.
I
Like,
speak it right?
yeah. Well, I would say like the about our body's the car, our mind is like the chauffeur, and then
Oh,
the
I like that.
soul is kind of sitting in the back going, here's where we're really going. Here's where we're
Oh,
actually going. So I guess, and the chauffeur, maybe the mind is kind of a tricky chauffeur who always wants to make stops, like to get snacks and, like do all this distraction. So, and the soul's in the going, no, let's keep pressing on to our ultimate destination.
wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great example. Can you
Yeah.
give tips or examples on like what would living from the soul look like?
I think it's about kind of detaching from drama is for me personally. Drama of, like relationship drama, job drama, social media drama, political drama, just like kind of stepping away and sort of just seeing that as a kind of reality that a lot of people are attached to, but isn't really that real. I mean, it all of those things are going to fade and be unimportant, whereas the soul is going to keep existing infinitely. I think I've heard it said in Course in Miracles, but I've also heard it said other places like the only thing that's real is the only thing that lasts or can't be diminished or taken away, and that's the only thing. Our political beliefs are going to all go away. our family drama is going to all change lifetime after lifetime. It's just this one piece of consciousness that doesn't ever shift. It never dies, never lives. It just always is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
But I think the main thing is like whenever you see drama, or maybe I'm just speaking to myself. Whenever I see drama, it's like, that's not the direction. That's the incorrect direction. Just back away, wait for further instruction. Drama, anytime there's drama, conflict, a lot of heavy emotion, it's just like it's all the mind. It's just the mind.
Okay, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
sort of do that frequently myself. I'm having a conversation and explaining something, and then I'm like, I think I was just saying that to myself, really.
Yeah.
That I needed
Yeah.
to hear that. Sometimes our words to other people are words that we really need to hear
Oh,
ourselves in their own way,
for
right?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So much like just the synchronicity of how we run into somebody and then we just say or they say to us what we need to hear, for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm currently working on a project, a self-love project that's sort of a spiritual exploration challenge that I'm looking to do in the future. And I think that self-love it's so important on this on our journeys here on earth. I won't say on this particular journey. I'm guessing it was on all of the particular journeys that we've been on. And I think we'll either struggle with it part of our lives, or for many of us, we struggle with it our whole life.
I think the reason we have so much need for the self-love journey right now is because in the generations in the past, self-love wasn't allowed really. Like we were taught self-hate really in, or maybe not self-hate, but self-shame or self-guilt or self-suffering. So we had like my parents' generation, a couple generations before that, all of those generations were really taught to, repress, hold back. You just followed the tradition. You didn't do what you wanted. And so now that we're getting more aware, this entire shift of, well, that is not the correct view of how we should be in our lives. We really need to really flip the other way and accept everything, love ourselves completely, not even dare to, but allow ourselves to be fully authentic. And so it's almost like the shadow side and then the positive side. And it's coming in so strong now because it was so strongly the other way in the last, I'd say, 3 generations. I don't know what it was like before that, but I imagine it wasn't that great then either.
Yeah, I would guess not. And
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way. And you're right. We are taught unconsciously or consciously self-loathing, the suffering. I mean, when we get into a lot of religious dogma, suffering is a badge of honor. And in fact, it has been
Right.
seen as a badge of honor. I would say even in my world,
Yeah.
with work and sacrificing. You sacrifice for your kids, you sacrifice for your family. And it's just, I think at this age of my life, it's become this huge aha. Like, what were you thinking? Suffering is optional, and it's a whole new mind shift. And I'm so excited for these new generations coming up because they truly do see it differently.
Yeah, I think also the idea of, you have to sacrifice for another. And at a certain point, I mean, the generations before us were working pretty hard on just surviving. So that was their task. We have slightly more luxury that in not in all parts of the world, but in some parts of the world, we have the option to do more than just survive. But kind of sometimes sacrificing, right? We're sacrificing for our kids, and sometimes that also equals some level of control. Like, I'm going to do this for you, and then you owe me. And self-love really allows all of that to go away. It just allows, I will be the best the best myself in all my aspects that I can be. And I'll also grant you, my child, my grandchild, whoever it is, my relationship, the same freedom. I don't have to control the outcome. I don't have to sacrifice so that you become a certain way. I can just let the universe care for you, just as we've all been cared for. There's kind of like a freedom from controlling, also the hypervigilance of making sure everybody's going to be okay. It's like we can just let that go.
Nice. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, the control thing is sort of blowing up all over the place right now
Yeah. Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
world. So it'll be fun to be an observer and watch it from the outside as it plays out, I think.
Yeah.
Let, let's talk a little bit about manifesting. It's a big topic. It's out there, especially when we talk about spirituality, manifestation, Abraham Hicks, those people, there's a lot out there with it. And we have the law of attraction. It all seems so easy, but yet people will become very upset and concerned because they feel like their manifestation process it didn't work for me. What did I do wrong? It's not working for me. And, some of the blocks are attachments to the outcomes and sort of the tensions that go with the intention. And,
Nice.
at the end of the day, we do get exactly what we manifest. We're just not happy that we didn't maybe get it quite right. But you talk about the law of flow, and that is a new way of manifesting. Can you talk about the law of flow?
Yeah.
I had not heard of that before.
Thank you so much. So I guess I kind of came into a lot of my understanding around the time, like I had the near death experience in 2000, and then right around that time, a lot of this stuff it was popular before, but for some reason I came in right when it was all just like pretty hot. And I started working with it, and I was so I could make it work pretty well. And I was so unhappy with what happened. I need a car, I need a place to live. And I realized pretty soon, at least for me, like we talk about the body, the mind, ego, personality, and the soul. For me, when my mind was trying to set things up how I thought it would be good, it really was somewhat of a disaster. Like I didn't know enough as a personality to pick the right things. Like as trying to manifest, you talk about someone's picker is off. Like I would just, try and pick these things that were completely wrong for me. So I started to think, well, maybe more people than me have this problem, probably because most people are picking the wrong things. I just started to just let it go and to see instead like where the universe was nudging me, like how the universe would drop these synchronicities or signs. And it almost became like this little, the breadcrumb path. And I just started to notice that the more I just followed that, the better things turned out. And the more I just followed the little subtle nudge, the more I was led to places where like I actually really wanted to be, like at a heart level or a soul level, to the people or the experiences that were really truly meaningful. And then I like to figure out systems. So I just went back and was like, well, what is this all about? It's like, it's about being in a flow state. When you're manifesting in the old way, you're trying to force the universe. And of course, we can't do that. When you're flowing, you're saying, okay, universe, you show me. I'm just gonna follow along. And it's like this effortless, well, it's not effortless when you block the flow, but when you let go and don't attach and just sort of follow, it is really, you don't know where you're going, but it's going to be the most meaningful place for you to be, and just that level of trust. So I found it works fantastic, and I really have been doing that for a very long time now, and I think it's a good approach. Like I would recommend it for sure. So I would recommend that way.
It makes sense because we just think that we have to come up with all the how-tos and how's this going to work and all of it. It's sort of funny because we touched a little bit about this podcast before we started the show.
Hmm.
And, I had talked about not following divine messages and, getting a few spiritual kicks in the butt. And when this whole podcast thing came up, it like did not resonate with me any level. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
was resistant for about 3 days. I will say I had an adult toddler temper tantrum with spirit over it.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
sort of like, well, fine, if that's what you want me to do, I'll figure this out and I'm going to do it. Not even really, and I still don't totally understand why I'm doing it. Like if there's some specific purpose or whatever behind it, other than I'm bringing, I shouldn't say that, huge messages to other people who are very curious and looking for answers to things that weren't readily available out there when I first started doing it. And I think it's still pretty limited. But it honestly has taken on a life of its own. It's become relatively successful and seems to
Hmm.
be going somewhere. I feel like there's something else there. I don't know what it is, but I'm okay with that now.
Yeah.
Like, Dr. Sandra Marie 10 years ago would not have been so much okay with that. And it would have had a lot of resistance. It wouldn't have
Hmm.
flowed this nicely. And I would not be having the fun that I'm having with this. If anyone
Yeah.
would have ever told me this was something I was doing and that I was enjoying it and
Hmm.
feeling like it was a life purpose for me, I would be like, what? No
Yeah.
way.
Well, you have the understanding to ask the questions that will bring answers that will create understanding for other people. So, without that understanding, you couldn't be asking the right questions. And so, but you do have that. And I think that's why the universe is like, she gets it. Let's have her ask the questions so people can hear it. Let's have her do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. If one thing doesn't resonate with you, out of the couple of years I've done this, I would like to think there's something that's been put out there that'll resonate with you because
Yeah.
the path is so unique for each person
Absolutely. Yeah.
and how to get there and the comfort level, what's comfortable for people to get there is just so different. So
Yeah.
it's been pretty cool.
That's
More to
great.
come.
Yeah. I like that you said the path is like, even like, I feel like I'm kind of on this narrow and deep path. Like, I'm very specific to my journey. But even so, I think it's important for all of us to sort of take a look at other paths, other traditions, and just kind of immerse ourselves in, well, what do other people think about this? Why are we here? What's the journey about? There's lots of ways of looking at this, of why we're here and what the meaning of our lives is about. And so it's just interesting to explore. And even if fully already, well, I'm supposed to be channeling and teaching, you're supposed to be doing whatever it is. So
Mhm.
it's good to explore.
Yeah. Well, even when we were talking about self-love a few minutes ago, I met someone and they use a lot of different techniques for just little self-love to get you through the day or whatever. And this was fascinating to me is he has you say, I like myself. And I've moved away from I love myself because I love myself is easy for me to say.
Hmm.
It's easy for me to say. I said this to one of my kids. Well, my daughter actually had this watch she bought me when she was in college a long time ago, and she had it engraved. And when she gave it to me for Christmas, she was crying. She was upset. She said the engraver put the wrong thing on the watch. And I says, it's okay. Like I really appreciate it. It was really a cool piece watch. It was very hippie. I loved it. And when I looked at it, it said, I like you. And I
uh,
looked at her and I says, you know what, Linz? A lot of kids love their parents, but they don't really like them so much.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you like me, honestly, this means more to me.
that's
But what's
great.
interesting over the years as I've done this work, to say I like myself was so much harder to say than I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started paying attention to that. And so when, I'm working on shifting my energy from
Hmm.
whatever energy or event that may be going on, or a difficult meeting, I'll just take a deep breath and say to myself, I like myself. And it's such a shift, but it took me a while to get there. So I think that's the gift of what you said, listening to different people, is
Mhm.
just different little ahas will pop up with you.
Yeah, yeah. And then you can take what you need the most or that make the most sense and use it for as long as it makes sense. And then maybe it'll continue forever, or maybe there'll be something else. And just kind of being open, the universe will provide, the little drop of nectar that you need in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. In your work, you talk a little bit about divine portals.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little
Uh,
bit about divine
oh no,
portals?
here we go. Yeah. Yeah, I journey around a lot in meditation, and I don't know, like I teach a lot of folks, and there are some groups that I've been with, for multiple years, where we are doing meditation together, and I know that those people can journey the same as I can. So I know that lots of people can do this, but I still find it kind of amazing, like where, like yesterday we had the solar eclipse here, and not here, the worldwide, not just for me.
Mm.
um and in
But
that
it
would
was
be,
just for you. It was just for all
that's,
of
well, there
us.
you go, it was just for each of us. But um during that, I was meditating during that, and these beings came who I'd never met before. They were sort of Mayan or Aztecian. They had like these golden caps and these rays streaming out. And then I thought, well, maybe those are actually like a halo. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. But and we went into this space I've never been in. And it's not necessarily common for me to have those beings, but journeying into like an alien portal, or a Celtic portal, or a past life portal, or to the next grocery store to see what's going on portal. Like, it's very easy for me, that's one of the things that's easy for me, is to just go into different spaces and time in the dimension in meditation. So a portal, I like to think of it as, I don't know, it's just like a little place anywhere where the veil is thin, maybe might be a way, or it's like a little doorway you can slip through in your consciousness to go elsewhere and see what's happening. And obviously, I don't know how it works. Maybe some quantum person does, but that's just what I experience. And so part of my practice is to just be really open, like, well, where could I go? And I don't try to go to a specific place. I'm just like, take me there, and seeing what happens. A lot of the places I don't even know necessarily, like those beings, I don't really know who they are or what it's all about. Um, so that idea of a portal as a little place, I'm trying to think. I want to say wormhole, but I don't think it's that. It's like a little place you can go to another place in the mind's eye, or in meditation, or from a place of consciousness. I would kind of guess that as humans develop, we're going to be able to do this physically, but obviously not today, that I know of. I mean, like, I think generations and generations, people will be able to, very Star Trek-ish, like, beam over somewhere else. But, obviously we can't do that.
No, but honestly, the concept is very real to me, and I don't think that
Yeah.
we're necessarily that far away from it, to be honest with you. I do a
Yeah.
lot of work with a fellow named Jim Self, and he talks a lot about the mechanics of spirituality. And the
Mm-hmm.
first time I heard the term, the mechanics of spirituality, I thought, well, that's interesting. And then, but it's all the sacred geometry and
Mm.
the vibrations, and the color coding, and all of these things play together. So when you were talking, I know what you're talking about's very real. And I was chuckling inside when you said, I'm not exactly sure how it all works.
Yeah.
All I kept thinking was, I'm sure Jim would sit there and like diagram this whole thing out for you and tell you
Yeah.
exactly how it works. You know, there's so many different energies on the planet that have lots of different pieces to the puzzle. I'm not really sure that
Yes,
anyone
that's
has
right.
all the pieces to the
Yeah.
puzzle, but there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle out there. And it's like, you know, a lot of times anymore, it's for me, it's like, wow, that's another piece to the puzzle that I didn't
Yeah.
get as I'm putting the puzzle together to get to what I think my potential end game of this is to become my real self, my spiritual self,
Hmm.
fully in this physical form. And
Yeah.
I think with everything that's happening energetically on the planet, you know, everything that's happening with the solar flares and all, I don't even know how
Oh,
to. So, with
yeah.
that being said, I'm going to ask you like the energy is like off the charts incredible that's out there, and it's affecting a lot of different ways. We have, you know, people talk about the dark, dense energy. So I don't even want to go there. We know that
Yeah.
exists and we're evolving out of it. With all this new energy that's like hitting and seems to be like hitting on a routine basis, how's it been affecting you?
Well, I know that after the eclipse, and I know this will, air at different times, but that was just yesterday's. I was not manic. I was on fire with not power. I don't even know. I was just, and um, so today I had my student group, and they all went through it at different places in the Europe or the US, and only one person reported being pretty wiped out. They just like sort of blew up and had to take a nap. But that feeling of everything fell away from before, like all the struggles from maybe 2016-ish. Last eclipse was 2017. So that all the struggle, it just dropped out. Like it no longer existed, at least personally for me. Obviously, the world is going to take its own time frame to have that, but this idea as again, like we've come into a different dimension, we've come into a different portal as a collective, and that was pretty exciting. I was pretty nervous actually moving up to the cliff. I kept seeing things like nuclear kind of fire and volcano and just all that, but that didn't seem to be what happened. It's almost like we had internal combustion and we blew up the past, is sort of how I'm looking at it now. We'll see how it goes. Some of the people reported today, one person reported that she could suddenly see horizontal energy planes, and um, another person reported that an elderly person they were caring for who had dementia, actually two people reported this, those people suddenly became totally lucid. And
Wow.
so there, yeah, there's something. I mean, maybe it won't last. We don't know. But um, different experiences like that, where again, our accepted version of reality. This is how it is. This sort of sludging through the mud of despair. Suddenly, it all broke open. Wasn't there anymore. And I think even a glimpse of that gives us hope of how things can be if we all just attune to this different level or different dimensionality. We can just be there, but we're not there fully, but hopefully this event will help us.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to catapult. It's interesting your description because I've been working on this golden orange light coating in my crown chakra to set it up to
Mm-hmm.
meet, which sort of matches
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
color description. And
Yeah.
it seems I felt like when the eclipse happened, I'm up in Ohio, so
Right.
I'm from Cleveland. Cleveland had beautiful. I watched it live from NASA off of there. That was the last of all the old energy leaving
Yeah.
the planet, and when it came back, the light is actually a different frequency, light kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's you know, I'm all ready for this to all happen and take place and be done and over with, like tomorrow or next week.
Right.
And I have to keep remembering this is a process that will probably take,
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
think
going to happen a lot quick. We're not talking generations, I don't believe, but I
I
think,
don't know, but I think, the when we paradigm shift at that level so quickly, um, it's like giving someone, like someone here in Oregon just won the like $1.3 billion lotto, right? So that person, they should be terrified. They should be terrified, because that amount of change is too much all at once. And
yep.
so that kind of thing too, like I don't know when we'll all get to consciousness, but there is something to be said for kind of letting things be at a pace that's comfortable for everyone, because otherwise we'll just kind of blow our circuits, it's too much to handle. And also, even so many people are so immersed in the shadow side of life. If they come into light, they will have to process their regret, they could just come through clear, but there may also be this processing of despair, shame, grief, regret. I don't know. I would imagine, at least in the old system, waking up and kind of like looking at the past, how you lived, there may be some coming to integration with that. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting time to be human, and this idea, we do get to be here in this really special time. It's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you that. I mean, this is a, I want to say this is a once in a lifetime, but this is a once in
Yeah. Yeah,
all
it
of the
is.
lifetimes that could ever have been lived time. And
Yeah.
here we are
Yeah.
experiencing it, talking about it, and actually being leaders and teachers to
Yeah.
help people through it. Like, this is just so intensely special.
It is. And, we're women. We have, unlike before, we have literacy, which we wouldn't have had several generations ago. Um,
50 years
Unlike
ago, we
that,
couldn't have
yeah,
gotten a credit card without having it co-signed.
we're free the society is free enough that we can, at least today, spread these ideas without fear of
Yeah,
religious or political, retribution. So it's kind of amazing.
yeah.
So,
It's a beautiful
yeah,
thing. I love it.
yeah, yeah.
So next, this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to throw a couple of concepts out and ask you to sort of differentiate between the two of them.
Ooh, a
It's
test. Okay.
yeah, it's not, you're going to be like, "Oh, once I do it." So,
Maybe.
this and this is sort of your world.
Don't ask me about cooking though, because I have no answers for that. I cannot do that at all. Or
Okay,
gardening either. Just like nothing practical. Okay, I'm ready to go.
okay, fair enough. Then I think we're going to do well with this. Channeling versus receiving messages. People seem to get confused about that.
Oh, I think they're the same. I
Okay.
suppose channeling is more traditionally used as people like Seth or Abraham Hicks, where they're channeling through voice. Um, but I pretty much, as far as I know, I only channel in writing. I consider that channeling too. I would, if I'm trying to say it in a softer way for people that maybe don't like that term channeling, I'll call it receiving. But I think they're identical. You just
Okay.
open up and you become the channel, you become the receiver, you become the tube or conduit. It's all the same.
Okay. So it's not like you're having a conversation with the archangelics or Yeshua or someone like that. Would that be a challenging or a conversation?
Sometimes I don't think there's any differentiation. Sometimes there'll be more of a character, but at a certain point, like a guide that has more
The
of a
one.
personality. Yeah, but at a certain point, the information will start to come through so quickly or so clearly, like you even forget. It's just like just coming through, and you don't even relate to, like, it's not a slow process. It's almost like a downloaded sequence of language or music or art, I guess, things that come through. So I
Okay.
don't think, like, I never experienced like the slower, like, question response. I experienced more like okay, here I am. And then I just try and keep up for
Okay.
me.
Is it, well, I was going to say, I don't think it's just for you. Is it hard to keep up with all that stuff, like just blasting in? And
I think,
sometimes I get stuff and
yeah,
it's like, oh, this is really cool and important. And then, like, I can't remember it in 5
yeah.
minutes.
Well, I think my process is mostly I work on a laptop. And like right now, I'm actually, since January, I've been receiving, I don't receive all the time or channel all the time. I just think I can't do it more than like an hour. That's about, then I get kind of pretty tired. Like, I try not to take any breaks. I try and just, and that again, that exhaustion. But I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, at the beginning, I could probably do 5 minutes. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
sort of like you get your stamina kind of to stay with it and not get tired.
Okay. It's sort of
Yeah.
like your energy starts to match and
Yeah,
maybe
or
get to
maybe
meet it
you
where it's
just,
at a little bit more. I
I'm
don't know.
not sure. It almost reminds me like if you're weightlifting, you can't lift very much at the beginning, and then if you just keep going, you can lift more. But you got to keep showing up.
Yeah, that makes
That's how I
sense.
see it.
Actually, that's a great example. Okay.
Yeah.
Knowing versus thinking.
Ooh, so those are very different, I think. Well, in the way that I would use them. Thinking is the mind, it's knowledge, it's facts, science, it's the person you mentioned who has all the systems of knowing how to go through portals. Knowing is you just know, is so fully complete to you that you don't even have to put it into words or explain a system. You just do it. Thinking would be, I'm going to learn this dance step and I'm going to watch a bunch of TikToks and take notes and left foot, right foot, shimmy. Knowing will just be, I'm doing the dance.
Okay.
Does that, yeah, that's how
Multidimensional. No, that makes sense to
these
me.
are,
I that fits in. Well, these are a lot of questions that actually type of questions I get back from listeners, and I thought, you know what,
oh,
I'm just going to sort of throw this out here because I feel
yeah,
like these are things that like these are your everyday life,
right.
and I
That's
thought,
true.
for you, it's like, okay, yeah, this is what it is. Multidimensional versus one-dimensional living.
Yeah,
Sorry.
multidimensional. That's good. Multidimensional is being aware of everything all at once, all the time.
Okay.
It's consciousness because in my version of the universe, we're always in many lifetimes all at once, in many dimensions all at once. Everything's happening, and we're just in this human life, sort of trying to keep up with one little part of it. One dimensional, I actually don't think one dimensional exists because I believe in
Ah,
multidimensional, but I would say that is the social construct, the culture. You get the job, you in some lifetimes you get the job, you get the spouse, you get the family, you work, you go to church, you die. Like that, it's just there's no room for any other view. That's how I would see it. And that's just a very limited example, but that idea of following in a set path with no other, with blinders on to any other ideas.
well, you explained that better than I would. I would have said it would be someone who's in denial of
Oh, that's,
everything
yeah,
else that's going on. Like it's sort of like a fallacy type of
yeah.
mindset that the one dimension. Next. Nope,
Okay.
go ahead. You're thinking of,
Well, I
nope,
think
you pondered it.
sometimes people live in denial or in one dimension because they're really terrified of feeling what,
Safe.
what will happen if they go into these other, and then their lives have to change. They're terrified. So they're like, I'm just going to stick on this path. I know it'll work. And it will. It's just not that exciting of a way to live a life.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
glad we went back to that because as soon as you said that, I thought, because it's not safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Consciousness and spirituality.
Well, consciousness is a state of being, and spirituality is more like the name for the belief system. So consciousness is like, let's see, spirituality is like Catholicism. It's a segment. It's a belief system. Consciousness is just the way.
That's interesting that you said that, because I was debating asking this, but now I'm going to ask it. So, do you see the term spirituality fading away? I almost feel like spirituality, what is spirituality now, is what religion was,
Yeah, yeah,
for the past eons, and that spirituality will start to shift into
yes.
the one consciousness.
I think that's exactly right. And I was even reading some, oh gosh, I don't remember, but some people were, I really like to do meditations in groups where we do like future looking. We kind of look into the future and see what it's like. And um,
I did one of those with you. It was interesting.
yeah, okay. So I'm going to do one pretty soon again, actually. So thank you for, to write that down. I don't think it wasn't in a group that I did, but it was somebody did something and wrote about it. And what they saw was that, or maybe, I don't know where this came from, but it was this idea that within 50 years, we won't even have spirituality. Like there will be no religion, there will be no spirituality. It'll just be kind of understood as consciousness oneness. Maybe, and it might not have been 50 years, but it was like in the future, not too far from now,
Okay.
all of these ideas will have been superseded by a bigger idea of our connectedness as one. So,
That's okay. That's really interesting. And again, I think a lot of things are going to happen a lot quicker. So that had been on my mind a lot
yeah.
lately, and I've wanted to ask it for probably to a couple of guests, and it was like, I don't know that you want to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
letting me feel safe enough to go down that path, because it really has been on my mind a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And it's, as people come out of religion into spirituality, that's kind of, for some of them, that's a big enough leap. And then if we're saying, oh, we're not even going to have spirituality, then that's like, what? No, it's too much change. So I can
Yeah.
see why you might have had hesitancy, but I think it will work out over time.
Yeah, I think it will. And, my podcast is about spirituality. And I'm like, do you really want to go down that path with this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But
good.
I think I think that we're headed there already. Some people
Yeah.
are just getting started with it, but there's so many people in different phases and
Yeah.
on different places of the path. I think the leaders, or whatever you want to call them, are it's happening.
Yeah. Like the pioneers or the explorers, they might not
Yeah,
even be they might not even be leading. They might just be exploring in their own way.
pioneers
Yeah.
and explorers, much better way to say it. Yeah,
Yeah.
those blazing the trail.
Yeah.
You're a trailblazer. Do you feel like you're a trailblazer?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I've had, every time I go into past lives, this is, I'm always like this French trapper in Canada, like in ancient times, and I'm literally crossing from the east to the west through the wilderness. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like now too. Like, thank goodness I don't have to do the pelts and things this time. But yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of markers, and I have gotten okay with that pretty much. I used to hope that there would be a lot of people thinking really similarly, and there probably are some, but I don't necessarily meet them all in my daily life. And I just have kind of like, well, that's just my path in this life, is meant to kind of explore, see what's out there.
Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you
Yeah.
being the trailblazer and doing it.
Thank you.
And it does put you in an interesting situation. It's sort of, as we're moving on to the duality of our existence, as a humanity and as the earth, because everything's evolving. It is interesting. I call it, being in the spiritual closet, and had a lot of conversations about it in earlier shows. But, like, this is my life, but I don't talk about it in a lot of other areas of my life just because it's not a fit. And
Mm-hmm.
it took me a while to realize that it doesn't make me, I don't know what's the right term, like a fraud or anything. It's just like, it's just not part of that existence. And I'm okay with that now. Like,
Yeah, that's really good. I think like especially, we used to live much more rural and now we live more urban, and I really had thought, oh, it's more population. I'll meet lots more people who kind of have the same view, and like, no, no, not at all. Definitely everyone's more liberal, which is great, but um and so I decided that that's the huge value of the internet, because we can reach people from everywhere. Like, we can reach our small niche of those who we want to, or not want to, but those who are thinking similarly. Yeah. Like, I had in my group today, I had South Africa, Germany, Australia, Norway. I can't even remember that they, and then all over the US and Canada. And it was just like, that's because it's a very niche group and we have to find each other. Like that, like it's not just like we're on every street corner.
that makes total sense. And
Yeah.
because sometimes it can, I don't know that it gets me in trouble. Well, sometimes I have to realize when I get immersed into my small group. So, like in spirituality, like I'm really excited about this, the intergalactics and the connections, and it's happening, like it's now, with a lot of this, a lot of these things, are talked about as future states. And, with our conversation, just with being a trailblazer, I think even within the spiritual community, sometimes people don't get like this is happening now. So, in
Right,
whatever
right.
my spiritual community is, that world, like it's very accepted. And even people who didn't, it wasn't part of their conversation maybe 5 years ago
Yeah,
or 2 years ago, like this is everyday part of the conversations. Like,
yeah,
this is happening, the portals are, opening, there's a lot going on. So sometimes I have to remember that, because in that little world, it's so real to me. I have to remember that the greater world is not quite feeling that. And, you have
yeah,
to sort of filter your conversation with your audience.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with all of that completely. That makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
It's interesting time. But that being said, I truly believe that the children being born now, and the more recent children that have been born, that they're different,
Yeah.
that they're coming in with these gifts. And I know this might sound silly. I mentioned this to a friend. I'm like, when you look at people sending you pictures of their grandkids or people having kids, like their eyes are wide open. These
Mm-hmm.
kids are animated, like as soon as they pop out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen pictures like this before. I'm like, these kids are different. I can
Yeah.
see it. I can see it in them, and I can see it in their interactions. So they're coming more evolved, and that's all part of the next stage
Mm-hmm.
of the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote a book about supporting kids or raising kids with psychic abilities and
Mm-hmm.
spiritual gifts. And I almost feel like it's a book that like is going to hit significant popularity,
Mm.
like now or in the next couple of years, because I I just feel really strongly, and this gets into the knowing thing too, these kids are different. And grandparents are of my generation,
Mm-hmm.
or even the kids, like I don't know that they're going to quite get their kids. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about that book and some of the tips that you put out there?
Yeah. Thank you. I don't have grandkids yet. I'm hoping that someday I might, and I'm pretty excited to, I mean, we'll see what the parents say if it's allowed, but if it's allowed, I'm just going to train those kids like all the techniques, like, let's go, you're 2 years old, let's do this. So we'll see if that happens. But the book, it's called Your Psychic Child, and I wrote it when I was pretty deep in the raising of my own. I had, I think, 3 kids at home at that point, and maybe the youngest was like 4 or 5. And so I was able to kind of look at them all in the different stages of like toddlerhood, young child, early teen kind of thing, and just sort of assess like what they could be taught and how to teach them in a way that would make sense to them. And so, like, instead of a spirit guide, we worked with the idea. I don't even remember what we called it. It wasn't called a psychic buddy, but it was sort of like that. Like you give them a way to have the language for the being that they're already in connection with. Like my daughter had the being Squishy, who was always with us, this being, and you give them the language so that they can do the work without getting really heavy on the terms that we would use. And there's some apps like mindfulness apps for kids. They're kind of starting to do this, but it provides a softer language that shows the kids how to do all the techniques or many of the techniques in a way that's age appropriate for them. Doesn't really get into too much oneness theory. It's more like the how to, like, because kids can do these clairvoyant techniques just like that. Like they're so fast, it's not even hard for them. They're like, what else you got? You're like, show me this, predict this. Okay, done. What else? Predict this. It's just so simple for them. And it's just, they don't have the belief that they can't do it. And so it's still retained.
They're pure in them. They've not been socialized out of it. Like,
yeah, they just know.
Socialized out. I know I have some grandkids when they were younger. They have a little bit of an obsession with crystals and love to play with the crystals and the tuners. And they'd like be 2 or 3, and they were very drawn to them. And so I would just like have them pick out the tuner or pick out the crystal and then sort of look and see what it meant. And it was fun. And it's actually, I was learning from them, to be quite honest with you, because I felt like they were very pure in it. But, I did get talked to for a couple of times, like, what were you doing with the kids when you watched them today?
Oh, you're teaching them that witchy stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
but it's all good.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not really very, like, we have in our house tons of crystals that are very specific and important. And I am not very, I think because I'm mostly air signs, I'm not really very attached to crystals or like, it's all clairvoyance and channeling for me. And I think that's interesting. And then other people will be, very much into that, or maybe they'll do animal communication, or they'll do hands healing, or they'll do mediumship. And I'm just very specific to my area, and I can do the rest, but it's not my task. And so I think it's interesting that we have all of these sort of precise, specific talents, and then, making the puzzle together is sort of what we're doing. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And again, that goes back to different people get attracted to different pieces of
different
the puzzle
parts
and making it all work. Do you leverage nature at all?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Sanity as well as
your
spirituality?
As much as possible. Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking, so interesting, because the last 30 plus years I've lived along very close to the Willamette River. And with each move, like, oh, now I'm on the Willamette River in Oregon here. Now I'm on it 6 miles here. Now I'm on it 1 hour here. I'm always on this consistent, and I think it's this specific river too. Like, I'm like, why? But the sense of place, the eagles, the trees, it's just, that is the forest out here, Pacific Northwest, is just astounding. It's so clear when you go there and just kind of relax. So I can't get enough of it. And I don't do anymore. Like I used to do more deep nature. And now that I'm older, I'm kind of like, well, maybe not today, but just even a little bit is astounding. It's so amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think it's not in a lot of people's purview. And even when you live urban, there's a lot of nature in urban
Yeah.
areas. It's just shifting your mindset and looking to see what's there and how to use that.
Yeah. I'm kind of shocked by how people don't know what that is or appreciate why. Sometimes going down to this park, so I'm in the city now and going down to this park on the river, and it'll be a beautiful day and there just won't be that many people there. I'm like, this is the best place you could be. And then other days I'll be there in the rain. I don't mind. I just put on my jacket. It's like, this is astounding. And nobody's really there. You'd think it would be the main attraction, but it's not. So that's that idea of the waking up, over time. It will change.
Well, that's true. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I know when I lived most of my life in Cleveland, they have beautiful metro parks and it's, right on the lake and stuff. And it's exactly what you said. I would go down to this vast area and these metro parks with the river, the Rocky River and stuff, and literally I'd have
Hmm.
the whole place to myself. It was sort of a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
And the nature is like, oh, who's that? There's a human who knows that we're here. Let's go see, and let's have that communication back and forth. The awareness is about two ways. It's not just us to
Yeah.
them, it's them to us.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that that's an important, that's important that you brought that up because the planet and everything on the planet and beyond the planet's
Hmm.
alive. I think
Yeah.
many times that gets missed that there's life in everything, which means
Yeah.
there's interaction in everything. I mean, you go back to crystals or rocks, right? Well,
Yeah.
those puppies are interacting with you. Like you can feel that energy.
Yeah.
And it's specific, but that's, someone else might say it's a rock.
I would even go further to say that even things like, my little water bottle or my pen or any inanimate object is communicating exactly at the same, not at the same vibrational level as a crystal because it's specific, but it is communicating its history and its awareness. So when we tune in, everything tunes in back to us. So it's just when we don't tune in, then we don't receive any of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a mindset that I think we'll be seeing shifting more and more in the mainstream. A little bit of
Yeah.
a ways to go there, but it's that
Yeah.
recognition that it's not just us,
Oh, yeah. Like we're just a small part of. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
microcosm
Yeah. When
in the
the,
bigger picture.
yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when we did those future meditations that we discussed a little earlier, one of the things that came out was the importance of the plants and all of plant life to like in those future, it was, I think we did, I don't know which one you were in, but we did 3 years, 30 years, and
Yeah.
300 years.
Hmm.
And I think at the 300 years, the plants were revered as one of the most important parts of life. Like they were the beings that were the most important to our survival, our health, our food, the oxygen, everything it was the plants.
Yeah. The value
Yeah.
shift. It's
Yeah.
actually the recognition which
Hmm.
creates the value shift. We take an
Yeah.
awful lot for granted. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, speaking of that, if someone wanted to work with you, what would that look like? And how do they get a hold of you? It's like I thought about that question and I thought you have so much out there. Uh,
Hmm.
your spectrum is
Hmm.
very significant. So I'll let you run with
Yeah.
that.
I think if people want to work seriously, they would want to be in the group training, which is, it's not hard, but it's intense. And then for people who, and that's for people that like, I'm gonna dive into this fully. And for people who want to have a self-study, take their own pace, it's affordable, then we have courses. And then the last would be the books. And I only say that because I'm working on some new books right now. So books are great, but I haven't had anything new for a while. So what's coming is not there yet. And that will be really amazing, but I'm not done. So, and then I do have a YouTube, which is pretty active. Like I'm teaching on that at least once a week and sometimes more. So that's good. So it's sarawiseman.com is the website, and they can just go meander around and look and see what seems appealing. I tried to have something for all levels of interest and time, and then there's also a free mini course which I really think is cool, The Magic of Blind Readings, and that's just, you can just sign up and that's a free gift that people can see if they like this style of work. Because honestly, if someone came in and they were like a super hands healer, they shouldn't be doing clairvoyance and channeling. They should go take hands healing work, So it's sort of like making sure it's a right fit is really important. So, because everyone has these different gifts. So
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you're putting out there. So we talked a little bit about the craziness of the world. Some thoughts for the folks that are listening on a way that they can keep their center and
I think
happening there.
I think this idea of when there's drama, disengage, and that also means in your mind. When you get all flustered by what you're reading and looking at, and I mean, part of it is too, like we have the news feed, and it's it's not all true actually. So it's a little surprise there. So like just continually disengaging from the drama and asking to see what's real. Just pray or meditate and just like, show me what's really going on. And even in spirituality, there's tons and tons and tons of misinformation and fear information and superstition. And just like, okay, if I feel agitated, I want to disengage from that, and I want to just go into my soul self and meditate and ask, what's the real guidance here? Like, what is really happening? And go with that instead. Because all the chatter, it's like none of it really matters. What's really happening, you're going to know.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I know I've been saying all year, turn the TV off.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Off. Get your phone. Don't look at your phone.
Yep.
Drop out of a lot of social media, or only look. Yeah, just keep and drop out of family drama if they're telling you this and that, the fear. Just drop out. Just drop out. It's not the truth. So.
Okay, that's very important information. So as we're going to tie this up, any last thought for the listeners?
No, what an interesting conversation, and I'm so grateful to have a chance to reconnect with you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. So I do want to thank you, and I do want to take this time to thank all of our listeners out there who take time out of their day to listen to both you and I, Sara. And again, thank you for all your work and being that trailblazer out there. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com.
This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.